October 26th, 1941. When it has been raining cats and dogs on the Eastern Front for days and days, and finally this week the Germans apparently have been convinced by the weather to stop attacking and to dig in and maybe hopefully start to take care of their logistics. Do you know what time is it? It is time to reshuffle the Red Army and rearrange its chain of command. Howdy folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new weekly episode of War in the East 2 with the online game challenge. And as always I would say there is not too much going on because of the heavy rain, but still I found some interesting information that I would like to share with you guys in this brief introduction. Before going to the events and into the turn summary, I wanted to have a look at the weather forecast, because for this week we have heavy mud. We do have also still some light mud in some areas of the front, and when I look at the weather air, the heavy rain now was replaced by rain, and maybe that explains why in some areas here there is just the light mud instead of the big thick layer of heavy mud. And also interestingly, if I look at the forecast for next week, okay, this is just heavy rain if I understand the color code correctly, but here is cold. Now I forgot what cold that, but I think that cold is like the pre-step for exactly for snowfall. So it could be that next week the forecast for the next 2 weeks will say that here will start snowing. Like it's probably happening here already on the tips of the Urals mountains. And for me it's interesting because I've never seen it like that. And even when reading the after action reports of other people doing both single and multiplayer, I think it's the first time I see something like that. And yeah, for me it was kind of interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys. And if we look at the turn summary, okay, on the map I've lost a total of almost 10,000 men, and the Axis 54,600. Now I believe that these, okay, are also losses, but I don't know if this includes also the transfer of units from the map to elsewhere. I don't know. Actually, we can double check right now. Yeah, because the Axis just lost 26,000. So yeah, most likely this includes not only the losses but also the shuffling of men to and from the map, most likely, because it is not possible that the Axis lost 54,600 men clean in total last week, because here it only says that they lost 26,000. So yes, and yeah, so besides that, okay, I've lost 45,000, most likely because the Germans wiped out the pocket, the leftovers of the pocket over here. But I received 122,000 men as replacement, and the majority of them went into the theater boxes, most likely the reserve theater box. Events-wise, again, I don't know how many Axis forces are fighting in Finland. I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. I care about what's happening here on the map, on the real Eastern Front. Yeah, screw Finland. I have time for Finland and to, let's say, convince the Finnish people that they should not fight me, and that maybe they should sue peace with the Soviet Union. Anyway, so we also have the Soviet partisans and so on and so forth. Yeah, we've seen the losses already, and we've seen the turn summary. So because of the rain, this week the idea is to carry on the reshuffling of the troops on the map. Oh, sorry, I'm playing around here with my cutleries. Yeah, and I also wanted to say a few things. I don't know if this is good for role playing, or it is just me being obsessed with this. But I noticed that many units, and actually we can have a look at them. let's just have a look at the units on the map, especially the rifle divisions. That will go to the northern front. Exactly. So I mean, I had to have quite a few actually, and the idea is to send those all the units, like for instance the 65th Rifle Division, the 372nd, the 370, no, the 378th goes over here. But I've seen I do have quite a few of them actually that no, where is it? No, anyway, so basically all the units that will at some point go to the northern front, I want to have them here in the either in the Leningrad front or in the Volkov front, when the Volkov front will arrive on the map, of course. Just I don't know. I think it's kind of makes more sense for me, obsessed with LARPing, to have those units fighting in this area of the front rather than in the Kalinin front, in the western front, or in the central or southern fronts. And the other thing that I also would like to do is to group in the southwestern and southern fronts all, maybe not all, but most of the units that will be disbanded in 1942. Because, okay, maybe I'm spoiling a bit of the strategy of 1942. I know that my opponent is listening, and I don't care if you're listening. But yeah, my idea is to send those units that will be disbanded at some point throughout 1942, like the 74th Rifle Division here, to the Transcaucasus theater box, because I know that there is this event about the Turkish intervention in the war, and I need to reinforce the Transcaucasus theater box as soon as I possibly can after June 28th, 1942. And so, of course, again, it would be much easier for me to have all of these units that will be disbanded in 1942 between July and August here, so that I could send them directly to the Transcaucasus theater box. I could prevent the activation of the chain of events that will lead to the Turkish intervention on this side of the Axis powers, and then leave them there in the Transcaucasus, and then let them disband over there to save some precious elements. And yeah, I would say that's it for this say brief introduction. And of course, yes, of course, because I noticed that I have an abundance of APs, I am thinking of reshuffling the chain of command, because for instance, I noticed, like, within this week, that Konev is in command of the North Caucasus military district. Ivan Konev, someone who has a morale of 7, initiative of 6, and admin points of 7. No, you have to go somewhere else. And also, I found that Batov, I think he was one of the commander, or a commander of one of the 5 tank armies, is now leading the 51st army. No way. No, absolutely no way. He is just wasted over here. And yeah, I will maybe change 2 or 3, maybe 4 commanding officers. It depends on how many APs this will cost. But yeah, so that's that's all for this brief introduction. And as always, and enough talking, and it's now time to dive into the episode. Alright folks, so the commentary of this episode will be slightly shorter, because on one hand it's the end of October, and as always there is nothing too exciting going on the Eastern Front, besides the usual arrival of units, and then me trying and doing my best to micromanage the rifle divisions on the map that will be disbanded on turn 28, so at the end of December, and by sending them in the reserve theater boxes. That was the first reason. The second reason is because I'm not entirely healthy at the moment of recording this episode. I'm recovering from I think it was a bad cold, but something that prevented me from talking like properly, and that's why I think also the episodes of the Axis PBEM have been slightly delayed this week. The week of the 21st and the 26th of October. But there is one thing that I want to mention for this episode that I did not mention in the introduction, in the camera introduction, nor even in the other introduction, because I didn't know about it. But this week, as I wrote in the title, this week the Germans have to say goodbye to their besieged 17th Panzer Division, because finally, after I would say 3 weeks of being isolated behind the Red Army lines, this week the men of the 17th Panzer Division, or I would say the survivors of the 17th Panzer Division, have been finally wiped out. Funnily enough, not yet the ones of the Großdeutschland. And now, gameplay speaking, I don't know why is this. Maybe because I didn't have enough strength, enough, let's say, attacking offensive power to wipe out the Großdeutschland regiment. But I had enough to force the men and the men, yes, of the 17th Panzer Division to surrender and to march into the Soviet gulags. I'm not, let's say, overly optimistic, because I know that the 17th Panzer Division will come back at some point. When? I don't know. It can be, I don't know, December, January, February, March of 1942, I don't know, but it will come back. But still, I believe that having one less Panzer Division for my opponent could be a small blow, because I don't know how will my opponent micromanage his Panzer Divisions. It's likely that he might use them in a defensive role the way I was using them, so to keep them 1 or 2 hexes behind the front line in reserve, so that they are committed into battle when I'm trying to attack. And this is how I generally use my Panzer Divisions. It doesn't make sense for him to send them back to Western Europe, because he cannot transfer infantry units from Western Europe to the map because they are all locked. So I believe that this would be the most efficient way to employ his Panzer Divisions, unless he wants to keep them on refit mode, on priority level 4 depots, and maybe on depots containing the FVD units, to have these super depots and to make sure that his Panzer Divisions are constantly up and running. I don't know, I'm just speculating, and yeah, let's see. Time will tell what will happen on the Eastern Front when the snow falls. And well, folks, having said that, I leave you to the rest of the episode. Enjoy the micromanagement, enjoy the surrender of the 17th Panzer Division, and I'll see you all again in the next episode. But first, as always, thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for supporting my channel.